Hello everybody, welcome back. As planned from our last video, we'll continue with President and Vice President. Let's get started first with powers and functions of the President. See, President has numerous powers which we'll study thoroughly. Let's first come to executive powers. See, in these powers, we'll basically see the power of implementing the laws, policies, etc. Let's begin. See, all executive actions of the Government of India are formally taken under the President's name. President can make rules specifying the manner, the order, everything that's executed in his name shall be authenticated. Then he can make rules for more convenient transaction of business and for allocation of the said business among the ministers. He can make rules regarding that. So he can make rules for two of these, and then the third point was the executive actions are formally taken in his name. Now we'll see that the President appoints a lot of people. Let's see whom. He appoints the Prime Minister, he appoints the other ministers, and they hold office during his pleasure. He appoints the Attorney General of India, and he determines his remuneration. Make note of this, of the Attorney General of India. Also, he appoints the CAG, he appoints the Chief Election Commissioner, he appoints the other election commissioners, he appoints the chairman and the members of UPSC that we've already seen in our UPSC video. He appoints the governors of the state, he appoints the chairman and the members of Finance Commission, and so on. Also, now we come to the other functions, other powers of the President under the executive powers. We have, he can seek any information relating to the administration of the affairs of the Union. Then he can require the Prime Minister to submit of any decision on any matter that has been taken by a minister but which has not been considered by the council. He can request the Prime Minister to submit those reports. Then he can appoint a commission. First, he was appointing the posts and members of a lot of important institutions. Now we see that he can appoint a commission on to investigate into the conditions of the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and the other backward classes. He can also appoint an interstate council to promote the interstate cooperation. He directly administers the union territories. This is one major power. All the union territories administration comes under the President. And he can declare any area as the scheduled area, and he has powers with respect to the administration of the scheduled areas and the tribal areas. This was with the executive powers. Let's see the legislative powers. See, the President can summon or prorogue the Parliament. He can dissolve the Lok Sabha. He can also summon a joint sitting. Then he can address the Parliament at what all occasions? At the commencement of the first session, after each general election, and the first session of each year. Then he can send messages to the House of Parliament for any bill pending in the Parliament or any other case. He can appoint any member of the Lok Sabha to preside when the offices of both Deputy Speaker and the Speaker falls vacant, and similarly he can also appoint any member of the Rajya Sabha upon the same. Then he nominates 12 members of the Rajya Sabha. He nominates 2 members of the Lok Sabha. Then we have, he decides on the disqualification of the members of the Parliament, however in consultation with the Election Commission. Then his prior recommendation or permission is needed to introduce certain types of bills in the Parliament. One such bill is Money Bill. Then we see that when a bill is sent to the President, he has 3 options. He can give assent to the bill, can withhold his assent, or return the bill. We'll read about it further in further details in this video itself. And then we see the same with the state legislature. He can give his assent, withhold his assent, or direct the governor to return the bill. Then we see he can promulgate ordinances when the Parliament is not in session. About this also we'll go through this in this very video itself. Then he lays the report of the CAG, UPSC, Finance Commission before the Parliament. These were the only posts which he was appointing, and now he only lays the reports of these institutions. Then he can make regulations for the peace, progress and good government of Andaman, Nicobar Island, Lakshadweep, Dadra Nagar Haveli, Daman and Diu. So just note that all of these are union territories, and in case of Puducherry also, the President can legislate by making regulations, but only when assembly is suspended or dissolved. See, the President also has certain financial powers. Let's know about them too. As I already mentioned, money bills can be introduced in the Parliament only with his prior recommendation. He causes to be laid before the Parliament the annual financial statement, that is the union budget. No demand for a grant can be made except on his recommendation. He can make advances out of the contingency fund of India and not the consolidated fund of India. Just note this. And he constitutes a finance commission after every 5 years to recommend the distribution of revenues between the centre and the states. President also has judicial powers. Let's quickly go through that also. See, President appoints the Chief Justice and the judges of Supreme Court and the High Court. He can seek advice from the Supreme Court. However, the advice of the Supreme Court is not binding on the President. He can grant pardon, reprieve, respite, and remission of punishment. We'll read about this, we'll know about this further in this video itself. Then we have the other powers of the President, the diplomatic powers, the military powers, and the emergency powers. Let's go through them. See, in diplomatic powers, all the treaties and agreements are negotiated and concluded on behalf of the President. Basically, he represents India internationally. Under military powers, he is the Supreme Commander of the Defence Forces of India. He appoints the chiefs of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and he can declare war or conclude peace, all subject to the approval of Parliament, obviously. And with the emergency powers, he has national emergency, President's rules, financial emergency. These we'll see in details when we study the chapter emergency. Now we'll see the veto power of the President. See, a bill becomes an act only if it receives the assent of the President. So when a bill is presented, the President has three options. He may give his assent to the bill, he may withhold his assent to the bill, or he may return the bill for reconsideration. However, if the bill is passed again by the Parliament, he must give his assent to the bill. See, the objective of veto power to President is to prevent hasty and ill-considered legislation by the Parliament, also which may be unconstitutional, that is not adhering to Constitution. Now, all in all, there are four types of veto powers: absolute veto, qualified veto, suspensive veto, pocket veto. The detailed view of these powers is given in this book, and so we'll go through them one by one. Also, of the above four, the President of India is vested with only three, that is absolute veto, the suspensive veto, and the pocket veto. There is no qualified veto in the case of Indian President. When we come to absolute veto, it refers to the power of the President to withhold his assent. The bill then ends and it does not become an act. However, this veto is exercised in the following two cases. Only when the bill is relating to the private member's bill, that is when the bill is introduced by a member of Parliament who is not a minister, and if the bill is with respect to the government bills, that is when the cabinet resigns after the passage of the bills, but the assent of the President was left, and the new cabinet advises the President not to give his assent to such bills. This is when President can exercise absolute veto. Now, these two paragraphs mentions the examples when President has withheld his assent to a bill. Next, we come to the suspensive veto. See, the President exercises this veto when he returns a bill for reconsideration of the Parliament. However, if the bill is passed again by the Parliament, irrespective of any amendments made, and it is again presented to the President, it is obligatory, it is mandatory for the President to give his assent to the bill. What does this mean? This means that the presidential veto, that is the suspensive veto, is overridden by a repassage of the bill by the same ordinary majority, because it clearly mentions that it is with or without amendments, and not a higher majority as required in USA. Also, President does not possess this veto in the case of money bills. The President either has to give his assent or withhold his assent. And why does it happen? Because money bill is introduced in the Parliament with his previous permission. Now we come to pocket veto. See, in this case, President neither ratifies nor rejects nor returns the bill. It can simply keep the bill pending for an indefinite period. Why can it keep the bill pending for an indefinite period? Because the Constitution does not prescribe any time limit within which he has to take the decision. However, in case of USA, we see that the President has to return the bill within 10 days. Hence, it is said that the pocket of Indian President is bigger than that of American President. However, we also need to see that this pocket veto is not given to the President in respect of a constitutional amendment bill. The 24th Constitutional Amendment of 1971 made it again obligatory or mandatory for the President to give his assent to a constitutional amendment bill. This was regarding the Parliament and its bills. Now we have to see what's with state legislation. Here, along with President, Governor also plays a role. See, when a bill is passed by a state legislature, it is presented to the governor for his assent, which is under Article 200 of the Constitution, where the governor has four alternatives like the President. The President had three, he has four. What's the extra? We'll see. He may give his assent, he may withhold his assent, he may return the bill, which was all three under President also. However, he may reserve the bill for the consideration of the President, which is new to the governor. And then when a bill is reserved by the governor for the President, what can the President do? He again has the same three alternatives under Article 201. What are that? He may give his assent, withhold his assent, or direct the governor to return the bill. And if the bill is passed again with or without amendments, the President here is not bound to give his assent, which was there in the first case when it was central legislature. This means that the state legislature cannot override the veto power of the President. Also, the President can exercise pocket veto in respect of the state legislation also. So this is it for the powers and functions of President. Let's revise. With regard to ordinary bills, under central legislation and state legislation, the President can ratify, can reject, or can return the bill, and the same as with the state legislation. With money bills, the President can only ratify or reject, it cannot be returned, the reason we all know. And state legislation also, it's the same. However, with regard to constitution amendment bills, President can only ratify, cannot reject, cannot return. However, in the state legislation's case, the constitution amendment bills are not introduced only. Now let's quickly go through the functions of the Vice President also. See, he acts as the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha, and his powers and functions are similar to those of the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. He also resembles the American Vice President, who also acts as the chairman of the Senate. He acts as a president when a vacancy occurs, maybe due to the president's resignation, removal, death, or anything. However, he can act as a president only for a maximum period of 6 months, within which a new president has to be elected, which is unlike the Vice President of USA. Also, while acting as president or discharging the functions, the Vice President does not perform the duties of the office of the chairman of Rajya Sabha. During this period, duties are performed by the deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha. See, now we are left with two more special powers of the President and few small topics, and then we are done with the part of Union Executive, that is President and the Vice President. Let's look into the additional powers. See, when we were going through the legislative powers, we came across the power of a President to promulgate ordinances. We'll have an elaborate discussion over this now. See, under Article 123 of the Constitution, the President is empowered to promulgate ordinances when the Parliament is at recess. And why is it done? It is done to deal with the unforeseen or urgent matters. However, this power of the President faces certain limitations in the exercise of his power. Let's quickly go through them. A President can promulgate an ordinance only when both the houses of the Parliament or either of the two houses of Parliament are not in session. A law can be passed by both the houses and not by one house alone. This is the sole reason why a president can promulgate an ordinance at that point of time. Also, an ordinance made when both the houses are in session is void. Thus, the power of the president to legislate by ordinance is not a parallel power of legislation. Next, president can make an ordinance only when it is necessary for him to take immediate action. Also, the decision of the president to issue an ordinance can be questioned in a court, and henceforth, we can see that the president's satisfaction is justifiable on the ground of malefi. This is the second limitation to the power of the president. Next, the third limitation is that the president's ordinance making power is coextensive. What do we mean by that? That an ordinance can be issued only on those subjects on which the Parliament can make laws, and an ordinance is subject to the same constitutional limitation, that is, cannot abridge or take away any of the fundamental rights. Also, every ordinance issued by the President during the recess of Parliament is laid before both the houses of Parliament when it reassembles. If ordinance is approved, it becomes an act. If no action is taken, ordinance ceases to operate on the expiry of 6 weeks from the reassembly of Parliament. Also, ordinance may also cease to operate if both the houses pass resolutions disapproving it. Next, if the houses of Parliament summoned to reassemble on different dates, the period of 6 weeks is calculated from the later of those dates. In other words, the total of the life of the ordinance is 6 months and 6 weeks. However, if an ordinance is allowed to lapse without being placed before Parliament, then acts done or completed under it before it ceases to operate remain fully valid and effective. See, the President can also withdraw an ordinance, however, only on the advice of the Council of Ministers, which is headed by the Prime Minister again. Also, this ordinance can modify, repeal any act of Parliament or any other ordinance, or it can alter or amend a tax law. However, ordinances cannot be issued to amend the Constitution. Also, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar has given his justification of the ordinance making power of the President, saying that this power has been devised in order to enable the executive to deal with the situation that may suddenly and immediately arise when the Parliament is not in session. Also, the exceptional power of law making through ordinance cannot be used as a substitute for the legislative power of the state legislature. This is it with the ordinance power of the President. Now, while discussing the judicial powers, we'd come across this point which we plan to see today itself. So without wasting time, let's look into it. After the ordinance making power of the President, it is the pardoning power of the President that makes the post of a President significant in the Constitution. See, under Article 72 of the Constitution, the President is empowered to grant pardons to persons who've been tried and convicted of any offence. How can it do? It can see into the cases which deals with the punishment or sentence for an offense against either a union law or by a court martial, that is military court, or if these sentences is a sentence of death. Also, we see that these power of the president under Article 72 is independent of the judiciary. It is an executive power and it does not sit as a court of appeal, and the object to confer this power was to keep the door open for correcting any judicial errors and to afford relief from a sentence as the president regards unduly harsh. So the powers of the president relating to Article 72 has subtopics. Let's quickly go through them. The first is pardon. What do we mean by that? It means that the president can remove both the sentence and the conviction and completely absolve the convict from any sentences, punishments, or disqualifications. Commutation denotes the substitution of one form of punishment for a lighter form, that is, a death sentence might be commuted with imprisonment. Remission implies reducing the period of sentence, that is, maybe imprisonment for 2 years can be reduced, can be remitted to the imprisonment for 1 year. And respite means lesser sentence, however, only due to a special fact, maybe specially able, or maybe it was the criminal was going through some mental problem or anything like that. So the only difference between remission and respite is both involves reducing the charge. However, respite means due to some special fact. And reprieve means that there's a stay of the execution of a sentence for a temporary period until when the convict may take time to seek pardon or commutation from the president. And this was under Article 72. Under Article 161 of the Constitution, we have that the governor also has the pardoning power of the president. So the government can also grant pardons, reprieves, respites, remissions of punishment, or can suspend, remit, and commute the sentence of any person. However, the pardoning power of the governor differs. How? Let's see. President can pardon sentences inflicted by court martial as we've seen here. However, the governor cannot. Also, the president can pardon death sentences while the governor cannot. It can only suspend, remit, or commute a death sentence. It cannot pardon a death sentence. And according to the Supreme Court, it has laid down the following principles which is followed, which are: the petitioner for mercy has no right to an oral hearing by the president. President can examine the evidence, and can take a view different from the view taken by the court. Power exercised by the president on the advice of the Union Cabinet, again we see this, and the president is not bound to give reasons for his order. Also, the president can afford relief if it's an evident mistake, and the president is not subject to judicial review. This power of the president is not subject to judicial review, and only except when the presidential decision is arbitrary or irrational or malified or discriminatory. And if the earlier petition for mercy has been rejected by the president, the stay cannot be obtained by filing another petition. Next, we'll put light on the constitutional position of our president. See, our constitution follows the parliamentary form of government, which gives our president only a nominal executive, the real executive being the Council of Ministers, as we've seen at a lot of places. So the president has to exercise his powers with the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. And according to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the president occupies the same position as the king under the English constitution. President is the head of the state. He represents the nation, but it does not rule the nation. He is a symbol of the nation. However, he is bound by the advice of his ministers. Also, when we see the constitutional portion of the president, we need to see Articles 53, 74, and 75. It says that the executive power of the union shall be vested in president. However, it shall be exercised by him either directly or through officers subordinate to him, which is in accordance with this constitution. Second, there shall be a council of ministers with the prime minister to aid and advise the president. Third, the council of ministers who aid and advise the president, they are also collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. This is the foundation of the parliamentary system of government. Also, the president may return a matter once for reconsideration of his ministers, but the reconsidered advice shall be binding. Also, we'll see that the president might have no constitutional discretion, but he has some situational discretion, that is, where he can work without the advice of the ministers. So, what are the points? The appointment of prime minister is done that way. Under the following situations, we have the dismissal of the Council of Ministers and the dissolution of the Lok Sabha. In all of these, the president does not require the advice of the ministers, so these are all situational discretion. So with this, we have ended the topic of president. I hope you've got a gist of all the topics I've tried to bring in. Next, we have few small topics from vice president's chapter. Before ending this video, let's go through them quickly. We have comparison between the Indian and the American vice president. The American vice president succeeds to the presidency when it falls vacant and remains president for the unexpired term of his predecessor. However, the Indian vice president does not assume the office of the president when it falls vacant. For the unexpired term, he merely serves as an acting president. So it is clear that the constitution has not assigned any significant function to the vice president. This office was created to maintain the political continuity of the Indian state. We next have a small paragraph under emoluments. Let's see what it has to say. During any period when the vice president acts as a president, he is not entitled to the salary or allowance payable to the chairman of Rajya Sabha. I think that goes to the deputy chairman, but the salary and allowance of the president is what he is entitled to. With this, we complete the president and the vice president chapter from Indian polity. We'll next have the prime minister and the council of ministers to take us further into knowing about the union executive. Until then, keep studying, manage your time well, stay in good health, and thanks for watching.